All right. So moving forward, how do you make sure that your child at home is a good student at home? Because remember, that's one of the funny parts about it is that David would come downstairs and he would do his usual routine. Shirts off, he'd grab his bowl of Cheerios and he'd go put on his cartoon and he'd watch his cartoons. Well, not in the virtual learning space, right? So getting up, getting a shower, brushing your teeth, putting on school clothes. So I want to talk about that for a moment. So I teach at a private school, and our students we have a mandatory uniform that we wear. And our students are wearing their uniforms during virtual learning, okay? So the first thing is get up for school. And I put that at number 2, actually. Get them ready for school. If your child last year got up at 7:45 or 6:30 or whatever time they got up, get up at that time. Keep that schedule. Ladies and gentlemen, one thing that I learned as a parent and even as a teacher was that during this e-learning approach that we're taking, we're trying to keep consistency and we're trying to keep normalcy. So get those students, get your children ready for school for the day. Secondly, stick to the schedule. Now, I want to talk about this for a second, right? Sticking to the schedule is easier said than done. Because remember, I can stick to the schedule in my classroom. That's because my students are here, right? If you notice at any time that your child is fidgeting, if they just need to get up and get away from the screen, as long as the teacher's not teaching them, as long as they're not in a virtual setting, for instance, if they're working on an independent task, allow them to take a break. But if they are with the teacher, same rules apply. We have the sign language symbols, the sign language sign to use the restroom in class. My students are in the Google Meet doing this sign because that's telling me that they need to use the restroom. But what I'm saying is that if the students are at a place in which they could take breaks, allow them to take a break. Okay, so where we say stick to the schedule, yes, we want to stick to your schedule. We want to make sure that your children are in their virtual learning environments on time. But if they are starting to fidget, if they are getting a little restless, allow them to have a break. But like I said, make sure that time is appropriate and they're not doing it while they are receiving instruction. And if they are, remembering what they would do in class. So for instance, I always tell my students, I would say, hey, you know what, Carter, I noticed that you got up and left while I was teaching math. I said, would you get up and leave math class in school? And Carter would say, no, Mr. D. And then we would move on from there, right? So yes, we want to stick to the schedule. Yes, we want to follow the rules. Yes, we want to raise our hand. But also, if the opportunity presents itself and your child needs to get a break, a quick break, go for it. Thirdly, is your environment ready for learning? So again, I brought up David and his Switch and his Rubik's Cube and all of these different all these different distractions that he had. So, David right now, we have his learning environment set up. He's sitting at the dining room table. There are no distractions there, okay? What he has his headphones. One of my favorite headphones, I love headphones, but look for the headphones with the microphone, all right? Look for the headphones with the microphone, because remember, as your child is trying to participate, teachers, we want to make sure that they're speaking clearly, all right? I have a speaker system in my class here, all right? This is the speaker that actually I was given this speaker system, and this speaker amplifies the students' voices for me. But when I was at home last year, I had my earbuds in and I had my microphone, so I really recommend those headphones with the microphone on it. Hey, you know what? Your child's going to need supplies. So a comment that I had from a parent was, look, my child's just sitting in front of a computer screen all day. I mean, this really isn't teaching and learning. That's not the truth, right? Your child isn't sitting in front of a computer screen. In fact, your child is going to need a pencil box. I have activities prepared for the first day of school where the students are going to need scissors. They're going to need paste. They're going to need to cut and paste. In addition to cutting and pasting, they're also going to need markers and colored pencils. So students are going to need those supplies as well. And then lastly, and I said this before, really encourage your child to take advantage of the chat feature. I can tell you that while I'm teaching math, I'm monitoring that chat window. And what I'm seeing, I'm looking for questions that children might have. Also, that's the place where kiddos are putting in their answers. I can tell you that I have a lot of students who they're shy, and they didn't like the video conferencing. They didn't like to share their answers. So one of the ways that they were able to contribute was they were able to use the chat feature of Google Meet. I can tell you that my little Stella, she's a shy one. I don't see it because she's not shy with me, but whenever she's in school, she's really shy and quiet. So although she's in kindergarten, she might be talking to either mommy or me to have her answers typed into the chat window. So what I'm saying there is like, if your child has a question, make sure that they're raising their hand and they're not saying, Mr. D, Mr. D, Mr. D, Mr. D, Mr. D, I have a question, Mr. D, because as a teacher, that's really hard to manage in a virtual setting, especially in video conferencing. So raising their hand. The second point I made there is that if your child is somebody who's comfortable with chatting their answer as opposed to raising their hand and participating, I, as a teacher, certainly look for that as well. So just a couple of pieces of etiquette. Stick to the schedule, but also being mindful of if your child needs a break, they're allowed to have a break. Unless, like I said, if it's during math class and they're learning about strategies for multiplication, getting up and going to get a snack that's not the most opportune time to do that. Okay. The second point is to get them ready. Make sure that they're ready for the school day, build in that routine, make sure that they're getting ready for school. They're wearing what they would wear to school. Last year, I had a lot of pajamas. I had a lot of bare feet. I had a lot of blankets. That's not school-ready material, right? So making sure that your child is up and ready for the day. Obviously, as I said, number 3, really want to hit that home. Make sure that environment's ready for learning. I'll say it twice. I'll say it 3 times, maybe a 4th or a 5th. But those headphones or earbuds with the microphones are really, really helpful. And that sound comes through nice and clearly. We have students, I can tell you that we have guided reading groups scheduled for this year. And when students are reading in a video conferencing setting, earbuds with those microphones or headphones with mics allows for that fluency and enunciation and articulation to come out. All right, so let's move on here. So just a couple of things, right? Abby, it's difficult to hear you while you are crunching on chips. Again, you're going to be at your child's house. My kids, since e-learning, since this whole pandemic, they are snackers. They eat constantly. But eating while they're in a virtual setting isn't the opportune time. And yes, that has really happened. So all of these quotes are true and from experience. Carter, has anyone seen Carter? Are you under your bed? And sure enough, the boy was under his bed. Kylie, your cat is adorable, but please take him out of the room. Look, our pets are beautiful, but our pets aren't a part of the classroom. Great answer, Mom, but I would love to know what your son thinks. I say that kiddingly. I actually met with a parent today, and she asked me, she's like, so what are some ways in which I can support my child? And my remarks to her was, let that student be a student. Let them struggle, all right? Let the learning process happen. Let your teachers teach, okay? Let your teachers teach, let your teachers teach. Obviously, you're going to be there to support them, but as that virtual lesson is taking place, sitting back, letting the teacher do their job. It's funny because it was a math question too, and she said it loud enough where the rest of the class heard it. So great answer, Mom, but I would love to know what your son thinks. So be supportive, but also let the learning process happen. And then lastly, obviously, is Phoenix, please take the blanket off of your head. So again, making sure that your child is up and ready, but also making sure that what they're wearing is appropriate. Like no bathrobes, no wild accessories, right? The girls of my class last year, they used virtual conferencing, video conferencing, as a way to show and tell things in their bedroom. Okay, so I do recommend the bedroom, depending on what is in there. I don't recommend the bedroom as being the best place for e-learning to take place because there's a lot of distraction there. And kids, especially the little ones, they tend to want to share what is in that space. So just some fun things to take a look at, but that virtual etiquette is important. Some more questions that I get are just, how can we help teachers? And this is something, again, as a parent, I'm looking to help my teachers out. I mean, My son's first grade teacher last year, I felt bad because I always had a new email for her because I just wanted to help her. I wanted to help her out in any which way I could. But, after thinking about last year, and talking to my parents this week, I gave them these four. First of all, it's just supporting them. Support your students at home. As I said at the beginning, with screen sharing, not only are we teaching the children reading and writing and social studies and all those cool in science and all these cool concepts, but we're also teaching them their digital literacy. So being there as a support system. So if your child can't log on, if your child don't remember their access code, just being there to support them. Secondly, we're always looking for in-class speakers. So how do we make this e-learning experience interactive? I talked about Google Docs and collaborating, working in groups, again, working with different platforms in which kids can touch manipulatives, and I'm going to share some of that with you in this math lesson that I have prepared. But, guest speakers. I could tell you that just the area I'm in, I have some Congress people who are there, some diplomats, a couple of people work for the National Institute of Health. I also have some parents who work for the NSA, but just taking advantage of that and just sharing. We're always looking for guest speakers. Virtual field trips are a great plan. We talk about the Civil War, and right now the Gettysburg National Park, they're doing a Ranger in the Classroom program. So I will be having a Ranger from the Gettysburg battlefield come into my class virtually and present. So we're looking for those virtual field trip ideas as well. And then lastly, again, this is more for the little ones, but if you could read to your child's class, I think that's huge. That is really huge. Last year, I had 2 moms who twice a week would read a book for 3 months to the children. And that was the calmest, again, it goes back to normalcy. Any way in which we can make this e-learning just like a school day, just like a normal part of their everyday life is the best thing we can do. So how can you help your teacher? Help your kiddo out with learning new tools. Please, guest speakers are an awesome addition. Virtual field trips are a fun way to say, hey guys, we're going on a field trip today, but you know what? We're going to do it virtually. It's a lot of fun. Last year we did a trout release. So my class, we raised trout and we got our trout in December and we raised them. So December, February, and then March hit us. And then that's when the school wasn't in session. We were at that stay-at-home order or whatever. So I had these trout, and at the end of the school year, in April, how do I release these trout while keeping the kids a part of it? So I was able to pipe them in virtually, put together some YouTube links, and actually do the trout release into the Patapsco River through a virtual field trip. So virtual field trips are super cool. And I'm looking for ideas. So any ideas that you might have, I'm sure your teacher would appreciate those. And anytime we can read to our kiddos, that's the best thing.